Well, here's the thing. I love working on Milestone stuff. I love all our characters. I look forward to nothing but doing this stuff again.
Hmm.
And we've worked on so much of it. But I wish there wasn't the need, or not the need, that the circumstances were different. And that the circumstances were different in this world. I'd rather have much different circumstances. And gee, guess there's no need for Milestone because the world is effing great. Then you know what? We need Milestone more than ever because the world's so effed up. Given my choices, I take the former, not the latter.
Welcome back to the Comics Cube, everyone. I am with one of the co-founders of Milestone Media, Mr. Dennis Cowan.
Hi, everybody at Comics Cube. It's good to be here.
Thank you for doing this. So, as I mentioned earlier, I asked you about this before DC Fandom, and then you said you couldn't do it on that weekend. I was wondering what was up. It turns out Milestone is coming back. My first question is for those people who don't get it. Now, I'm not from the U.S., so a lot of people probably look from I know for a fact some people look at the U.S. from outside and wonder things like, oh, why is there a need for a comics imprint that showcases minorities? So yeah.
So, yeah, the people could ask that question. Milestone was founded in the 90s, in the early 90s, 92, I think is when we first came out with our first books. I could be wrong. But the economic and social circumstances for people of color, Black people, and minorities in the 90s were not much different than they are today. There was police brutality, there was systematic racism. There's a lot of stuff going on. And it was also a time in the 90s of a Black cultural renaissance. So if you remember the late 80s, early 90s, it was a time of Spike Lee, She's Gotta Have It, and Do the Right Thing. It was Public Enemy. It was, um, um, Kid and Play in the movies. It was a lot of stuff going on. New Jack City, right? And Milestone was a part of that whole movement. If you flash forward 30 years later, and we have protests in the streets, we have systematic racism, we have police brutality, we have the same things going on, and still what I feel is an underrepresentation of minority voices and and Black characters in comics. But more importantly, more than Black characters or minority characters, the people who are actually making decisions about editorial decisions about the books, the talent behind the books, the writers and everything else. That's what Milestone was really about. And there's still a need for that today. So we're back.
And you co-founded it among other people with the late
Yeah, I
great.
co-founded it with Reggie Hudlin, well, not with Reggie Hudlin. I co-founded it with Michael Davis, Dwayne McDuffie, and Derek Dingle.
Mhm.
And an unsung guy named Christopher Priest was there, formerly Jim Owsley. He was there at the beginning too. Reggie Hudlin, my current Milestone partner, was actually one of the people we asked to join when we first formed Milestone. He couldn't do it because he was busy shooting a movie. And I think the movie was called Boomerang. I'm not sure, but it was one of those major movies that he was doing. So he literally couldn't stop that to work with us. But he was there at the very beginning. We really wanted him. He was super fan, a super good guy.
Oh, so
So
you've been friends with Reggie for
I've been
a
friends
very
with
long
Reggie,
time.
yeah, over 30 years.
Yeah.
Oh, easily. Yeah, we're
Uh,
not new.
and a lot of the characters created, you guys created them all together, right?
Yes, I mean the initial core group of the Milestone characters, we literally all sat in a room and started spitballing ideas about what we wanted to do. After we decided to form this collective, this company, we sat down and figured, okay, we need to do some superheroes and some villains. What are we going to do? So we sat in my studio on 23rd Street, 23rd Street in Manhattan, and looked at each other and just worked it out. Okay, we're gonna need a Superman type of archetype kind of guy. And um, then somebody would say, well, he's super strong. And somebody else would say, well, of course he could fly because Superman could fly. So this guy could fly. I think Dwayne is one who came up with this idea, and he may have had it kicking around. Yeah. And instead of his rocket ship landing in a wheat field, it landed during slavery times in the US in the 1800s. And the rocket ship's discovered by a slave woman. Changed everything. So this is the way we spitballed ideas back and forth. I don't know. I always liked Iron Man, so we need like an Iron Man kind of archetype. But I want to take that stuff in a different direction. That's where hardware came from. Static Shock, or it was never called Static Shock when we did. Now they got me calling it Static Shock. Static was another one of those, all of us sitting in a room looking at each other, trying to figure out, okay, we need to do like a Spider-Man kind of character. But we want to take it back to when he was like 14 and young and impressionable and all those things that were magic, except he's going to be a black geeky kid and a science fiction nerd. And this is before Blurs. He's going to read comic books. He's going to be just like us when we were kids. And that's where Static came from. So we just kept building it up like that. That's how we did it. We all created it together. We really did.
Who did you see as the flagship character of the line?
I didn't have one. I mean, my favorite at the time I was doing it was Dwayne and I had just finished doing a book called Deathlock for Marvel. Mm-hmm. So when we first started kicking around the idea for Milestone. So probably my favorite was Hardware.
So when you drew?
Yes, the one I drew. Yeah, the one I drew. It's the book that Dwayne and I did together. And it was a ton of fun because we just got to talk about all the stuff we wanted to talk about in comics and in life and everything else, and how it was for us. So that was the one that was closest to my heart, but they were all dear to me, having designed everything and did all that stuff. I feel a connection with all of it.
Quick digression. You did Deathlock, Hardware, and later on you worked on Steel. You just really like drawing machines?
I did all the black armored guys that there were to do, it seems. It's like, if you want to draw a black armored guy, call Dennis Cowan, because, he's pretty good at them. Yes, I drew Deathlock, I did Steel, and I did Hardware. Yes, sir. It's like strange. I thought about that the other day. I thought, geez, what was it about armored dudes, black armored dudes that I kept doing? I don't know why.
You just got to get on War Machine.
Yes, so, right? Yeah. The last one.
So this was always curious to me because we all know that Static is the one that got his own cartoon, hit the mainstream and everything. But which of the comics, if you remember, which of the comics was the most widely read or most well received? Do you remember?
Which was the highest seller?
Which was the highest seller?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I really don't. And it wasn't like, Static was popular. I don't know if it was our most popular, like if that was the breakout character that people seemed to think it was. It was the one that was picked up by the WB, to turn into a TV show. But I don't know if he was our most popular character, even when they picked him to do that. So I wouldn't even know how to answer that. They were all very popular, is the right answer.
Was he picked for the WB mostly because of his age?
It could have been because he was 14. The show at the WB was first developed by an excellent writer-producer, guy named Alan Burnett, mm-hmm. who came up with the initial pitch for Static, and he pitched it to the WB like this. He said, "It's Chris Rock at 14 with superpowers." Sold. They were like, "Oh, we could see that show." Later on, they asked me to come in and really explain who Static was and what it was about. So I met with the network executives and laid the whole thing about who Static was and what it was all about, it, what we were trying to do at Milestone and everything else. And they ordered the show. 4 seasons later, we were done. But it was a heck of a ride. But I think Alan pitched it. I think Alan's the one who first saw the potential in having this singular character as a cartoon show. It wasn't me. I didn't think that. We were thinking more like group shows or like a team up show, or, back then there weren't a whole lot of superhero shows that weren't corny either.
Yeah.
They were all like kind of corny, right? Captain Planet or whatever. So, we were trying to think beyond that, but there wasn't a lot to go on. Nowadays, everything's much different, thank God. It was rough back in the 90s.
Cartoons are better now.
Cartoons are better.
So with even with something like Static, there was a lot of cross intersectional types of minorities. Static has a gay friend. I noticed that in the cartoon, they didn't
They
mention
didn't
that at
really
all.
mess. I mean, this is like the early 2000s, so that wasn't like something that they did. Now,
Mhm.
however, they did go in and they did talk about racism, prejudice, bullying, a lot of issues that they still weren't talking about when we did Static in the early 2000s. But we ended up talking about them on the air. Losing a parent, like kind of serious stuff. That's why we got the Humanitas Award because we did all these different themes. But unfortunately, gay representation and gay people's rights weren't one of the things that we explored. We did it in the comics, like you said, but not the TV show. But the TV show wasn't entirely under our it was under our auspices, but not under our approval.
Yeah,
It wasn't like, we could do anything we wanted and then just put it on TV because
of
we
course.
created Static Shock. So, it was all good. No, nothing
Uh,
like that.
Getting back to the comics, Icon, use Superman analog, and I noticed that the thing that really rounds out the story of Icon is Rocket. So, what was for somebody who started out as a Superman character, what was the inspiration to really kind of give him a female partner?
It's hilarious, right? Well, the conceit with Icon and Rocket, and this is the thing that always cracked me up because people never got it. And you see these dudes rushing in and getting the Icon and Rocket book. Icon's my dude. I love Icon. In fact, I'm a cosplay and put on a red, black, and green suit. I'm gonna do this and do that. And there was a lot of that. People love Icon, but the book was never about him. It was really always about Rocket. And if you look and go back and reread those books, all those books were told from her point of view, never his. I think the first one started out with her diary, right?
Yeah.
Like, what a girly thing to do. My diary, dear diary, blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And that's how we did that book. So everything you saw with him was through her. And it was Dwayne's way and our way of really kind of subverting the genre and writing a girl's book under the guise of a boys superhero comic. The Icon and Rocket was really always, should have been called Rocket and Icon because it was really, the stories were really about how she saw everything and how we experienced Dakota through her, not the other way around. I don't know if there was ever an Icon thought balloon. So you knew what Icon was thinking. You knew what he did and what he said and what Rocket said and talked to him, but not him. Gee, no thought balloons from Icon. Probably I'm wrong, but I think I'm right.
I don't think I ever saw one either.
No, when you think about it, you're like, oh, I was fooled this whole time. Yeah, it's Dwayne. It was brilliant.
It's a twist. It makes that book really still. I mean, they all still hold up. That really still holds up because you see a lot of female protagonists now in comics.
Right.
It's kind of ahead of its time.
Yeah, it was. Well, I think we were in a number of ways not realizing we were ahead of our times. We were trying to be of our times doing the stuff we were doing, and to be very much in the moment. Comics weren't that at that time. They were still rehashing old comic book tropes and whatever, but we were trying to do something that was relevant and something that felt like it was in your neighborhood and it could be taking place right next door. That was one of our goals, and I think we succeeded with that.
And even with Hardware, you had a storyline where he was kind of contracted to this this white man.
Right. Right. And the guy was using his weapons the guy was using his research to make weapons, and then he rebelled against him and started using the stuff he had developed against that dude. So Yeah, no, hardware was a lot of fun for us because of that. There were metaphors. You don't have to look too hard to find them.
Yeah. Is it sad for you that all that stuff is still relevant today?
Yes. Well, here's the thing. I love working on Milestone stuff. I love all our characters. I look forward to nothing but doing this stuff again.
Hmm.
And we've worked on so much of it. But I wish there wasn't the need, or not the need, that the circumstances were different, and that the circumstances were different in this world. I'd rather have much different circumstances. And gee, guess there's no need for Milestone because the world is, effing great. Then you know what? We need Milestone more than ever because the world's so effed up. Given my choices, I take the former, not the latter.
There's so many, yeah, there's so much stuff going on right now. And they think, it seems fitting that the Milestone's announcement to come back happened in 2020.
Everything happens in the right time. We were trying to come back years ago, and we got involved with several, different difficulties, lawsuits, different things that nobody should have to live through because those are just nightmares. So we were supposed to come out like all this time ago, but now I realize that maybe these delays were necessary so that it came out at the time it was needed, as opposed to the time we wanted it. We wanted to do it. Everything in its time, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I did notice that there's a lot of announcements for the new Milestone, and including finally re-releasing everything on digital.
Yes. Yeah. I know DC's plan is we slowly do not a slow rollout, but a rollout until we launch, where they're going to be reprinting and making all the old material available digitally. So you'll be able to catch up and read all these stories. Part of the issue with us is that we did a whole different coloring process when we did our books. If you remember, they weren't colored like regular comic books. They were done on blue line. They were painted. So it's a different photography process to re-photograph all that material and make sure that it looks good. It's taken a while, but it's worth the effort. So yes, all the material will be re-released, and there's going to be a treasure trove of stuff for the fans.
Is there a plan to also re-release everything in print?
I don't know. Maybe. I know they're going to re-release some of it in print. That I have to get back to you on because I'm not sure. I know there's a big digital release. I'm not sure if there's a big print release, though. They seem to serve both audiences pretty well these days. So,
will they continue? Will their adventures continue maybe on a different Earth, or will they?
Milestone?
Yeah.
Well, the Milestone stuff. The announcement was about the new stuff we're doing.
Yeah.
So there's new Icon of Rocket, story by Reggie Hudlin, drawn by me. There's new characters that if you look at the poster, you'll see them on the poster. One of them I did the art for, and Bill Sienkiewicz did the inks. Chris Soto did the drawing. Reggie wrote that one too. There's a new Static story by Kyle Baker. There's a new another Static story by Ryan Benjamin and Reggie. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stuff going on. We got Greg Pak working with us, Coy Fram working with us. Ken Lassie's done some stuff. So there's a lot of new stuff coming out. And it's the new stuff that we're most excited about at Milestone. So there's older characters with new stories, new characters with new stories. And but the same old fire, that we had before.
Will they be integrated into the DC universe?
You know what? Who knows what could happen in the future? My vision of it is that they're not.
Okay.
They're on Earth. They're on Earth M. They're on Earth Milestone. And you might see different versions of DC characters on Earth M than you would normally see in the DCU. But I think we're kind of separate.
I think they work better on their own.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, I don't think you can have Icon and Superman really exist in the same universe.
Well, we have. We did a thing called Where Worlds Collide, back in the day at Milestone, where we had an epic crossover with the DC universe and the Milestone Dakota universe is what it's called. And so we had Icon versus Superman, hardware versus steel. Like we really did the matchups.
Yeah.
So when you go back and take a look, you'll see they can exist in the same universe, and they're gonna blow each other up. This is comic books. Anything can happen. But I prefer they operate for now under Earth M, the Dakota universe.
Of all, and then, you know, there's a lot of announcements too about other media on its way.
Right, right, right. It's all true.
I'm assuming Reggie is the driving force behind the other multimedia? No? Okay.
You know, we're both the driving force
Okay.
behind everything. Reggie's not the driving force behind the media any more than I'm the driving force behind the comics. You know, it's a partnership. So where one of us might take the lead on something temporarily, we both pretty much make all the decisions down the line about what's going to happen. So, you know, all the stuff that was announced at the Milestone fandom panel, it's all true. There's a Static Shock movie in development. We are talking to the different divisions of Warner Brothers about 2 Static Shock related projects and a few others that are not Static Shock related. Audio books, animation, 2 animated things, 1 audio radio play thing. There's a lot of stuff. So it's all happening right now, despite the pandemic. It's all going on.
Any fond memories of working with the late great Dwayne McDuffie?
Any fond memories?
Yeah.
Well, you know, they're
Funny stories or
all kind of fond memories. I mean, one of the things I did with Dwayne, I always tell people about this to give an example of his mind, was, you know, after working all day at Milestone, whatever, and sweating over like putting together the Bible, whatever we were going to do, we're trying to do in the early days. This is all happening in Chelsea, the Chelsea area of Manhattan. And Dwayne and I would frequently take trips to the bookstore just to take a break. So we'd walk to the bookstore and talk about all the things we wanted to do in the comics. And Dwayne was about 6'5", 6'6". So we're walking down the street like with Mutt and Jeff, and I'm like 6 feet tall, 5'11". I'm not short, but I'm looking up at Dwayne like this, just talking to him. So we finally get to the bookstore on Fifth Avenue, and Barnes and Noble, or whatever it was, giant, huge bookstore. And I go in, and I would go in and I would buy an art book, maybe a book on a musician, then another art book, and then a book on, you know, some comic book related book. You know, I would get that. That's what I'm getting. Dwayne would go, I swear to God, he'd walk out with a book on metaphysics, some mathematic theory, the playwright, the plays of Eugene O'Neill, and some obscure Japanese, you know, haiku writing from the 17th century. Swear, that was Dwayne's reading list. I looked at him and I looked at his books as we're walking. I'm like, the hell did you get? You're gonna read all those? He's like, yeah, it's just like reading for me, and he meant it. I'm looking at my piddly stack of books, going, I'm not well-rounded in anything. Dwayne's mind was so well-rounded that he got all these different subjects, and it was just light reading for him, and he really meant it. A brilliant, brilliant dude. I think he laughed at my books, but I certainly wasn't laughing at his. And I was just thinking, who am I partnered with? This guy's like a mega mind. And he really was.
that's where that kind of explains how he was able to write so much stuff with so much variety.
Yeah, no, he was extremely curious. You know, as I said before, my idea, Milestone was my idea. That was my idea. I'm like, let's get together. Let's get a bunch of Black creators of color together, and we'll form this group, and we'll do some comic books, and we'll create some characters. That was the extent of my idea. I know enough dudes, we can do it. When I told Dwayne about that idea, he looked at me, said I was crazy, and then said he would help out and join, and then expanded the idea so that it was really a company that was welcoming to minorities and people who are underrepresented in comics, all people, not just Black people. That was Dwayne's genius too, because he opened my eyes and everyone else's eyes to what was possible with Milestone, and we did it.
It's amazing.
Yes. Yeah, no,
Uh,
Dwayne was,
yeah, that's like such a great story. Um, can I ask you about? Can I ask you about of all of the hats you wear for Milestone? You know, artist, a producer, partner, a founder, and everything. Which hat is your favorite to wear?
uh, you're also different in a way. You know, here's the thing, probably all of them. But the thing is, you know, when you're drawing, like I'm sitting there drawing an icon or whatever I'm drawing, you're thinking about all the other stuff. Like you want to just focus on art, but you're thinking about, okay, I got to get this done in time because the marketing people need it for this. And then they're going to take this poster and turn it into this advertisement. And oh my God, is it going to be good enough for that? But it really has to get done. And there's no time to do this, to even think about how good it's going to be. It just has to get done because, oh my God, there's an email from the people. They're waiting for it. Like this is what you're thinking when you're drawing. So you're not just focusing on the drawing, you're focusing on all the steps and all the different things that will be needed from Milestone to make this happen. If you're in a production meeting and you're talking about these characters, you're sitting there realizing you probably know more about them than anybody else because you sat there, and as you're sitting there, you're thinking, I'm not at home drawing this icon story. I need to be drawing right now, or this stuff's going to be late. You know, so it's like you're always thinking about kind of the other thing you have to do while you're wearing a hat. I don't have a favorite, but I'm aware of the challenges and the advantages of doing all of them. If that
Oh,
answers you.
yeah. Obviously, with Milestone, it really shows that racial equality and representation is very important to you. In the
Right,
early 2000s, for the BET, you helped adopt. You helped adapt the Boondocks by Aaron McGruder.
right, right. Well, that wasn't for BET. That was for Sony Television, and I was that was the first season of the Boondocks. And the basic story, the truth of that is that Reggie and Aaron were working together at the time. And I know that they were trying to pitch the Boondocks at different movie studios and TV studios in Hollywood without success, not because it sucked. I think it was just more of the approach or a lack of a visual representation. So I basically took that strip, got some animators together, got some voiceover actors together, um, and put together a presentation reel for the Boondocks and how it will work as an animated show. And you know, just took one of the strips, did the jokes, did the timing, did everything, animated the characters, limited animation, put it together in a reel, showed it to Aaron and Reggie. Aaron was not expecting to see anything. Looked at it, was like, "Oh my God, this is great." And Reggie liked it, and that's what they took over to Warner Brothers, Sony, and everywhere else, and they sold the show to Sony based on that thing I had produced. So based on that, I was one of the producers for this first season of the show, and along with another Cowan, a guy named Brian Cowan, who was the other producer. And you know, we worked Aaron to bring that first season into fruition. And after the first season, I left, you know, to work with Reggie at BET. But I did that for Sony. And yeah, we did the Boondocks for Sony Television, and they sold it to whoever they sold it to. You know, this is ironic because when I went to BET with Reggie, Aaron did episodes where, you know, the guys at the Boondocks are bashing BET. So it's like, okay, whatever, dude. You know, it's all good.
Aaron just bashed everyone, though.
Aaron just bashed. He's a basher. He just bashed everyone. So that's how you make your living, and you know you should do that.
Was it hard to kind of, you know, envision kind of how you take a daily 3-4 panel strip and then expand that to?
For me, it wasn't, because I basically looked at it like I looked at Peanuts, right? The Charles Schultz strip,
Mm-hmm.
and how he was able to take that strip and translate it into animation very effectively. He didn't change any designs or anything. There wasn't much to do, you know, except story content and keep it simple. So my concept was really just taking the designs from the strip and doing that. Aaron's concept was turning the whole thing into an anime. That's what he saw in his mind, which is why the strip looks so much different than the comics. The comics were limited by his drawing ability, which, though limited, had its charm. The animated series, he couldn't draw like that. He couldn't even begin to draw like that. But in his mind, that's what he wanted those characters to look like. So we hired people to make it look like that. And that show ended up looking the way it did. Wonderful looking show. Not exactly the way it was first envisioned, but it came out the way it came out.
Speaking of racial representation and equality, I noticed that in your bibliography, you tend to draw black characters. Is that something that you actively look for?
Yes, because I like drawing black characters. I like drawing all the Steels and Hardwares and Black Panthers and Luke Cage and all that stuff. I don't see any problem with that. I have artist friends of mine, black artist friends of mine, writers who feel that they'd be pigeonholed if they did something like that. And my feeling has always been there's no greater honor that I could have than other than working on characters who look like me, black characters who I grew up with, who I've invented or yet to invent. It's the highest thing to me, not the lowest. So if I can, they ask me to do Luke Cage or they ask me to do Mace Windu or whatever, I hop to it. I'm so happy to do it because I like to represent who we are. I also like working on Batman and Superman and Captain America and all the other stuff that I've done. Dr. Zero and, the numerous white characters like the Question. I have no problem with doing that stuff, but I lean in toward the black characters because if I can use whatever little bit of notoriety I have in comics to call attention to these or make people pay more attention to these characters, I'm all for it.
If I may be blunt, I think you're underrated.
Oh, you're so nice. That's very nice of you. Yes. A legend in my own mind, probably.
I really do. Because I think anytime I see your name on the art of a book, I'm like, oh, it's drawn by Dennis Cowan. That's really cool. It's going to look really good.
Oh my God, you're so kind. Thank you.
You also worked on, I noticed, and I just have to ask this one really quick. You also worked on a Black Panther and Captain America, Flag of Our Fathers.
Sure.
There's a moment in the last Avengers movie where the two of them share a look, when Black Panther comes out of the portals, and it looks like a passing of the torch. Do these characters strike you as similar, or?
Well, I'll say this, I don't know how much, I'm not sure how much, my Black Panther, I did a miniseries in the late 80s or the miniseries I did with Reggie in the 2000s affected the movie. I have no idea. I do know that Reggie's work on the Black Panther, specifically that first story arc he did with John Romita Jr., and the work that Don McGregor did, and the work that Christopher Priest did on the Black Panther, influenced that movie a lot. I'm not sure if anything I did, but I know the work that those writers did. So,
okay.
That's as far as I can go with that movie and my influence in any kind of way.
And of course, you mentioned the Question. That's a character that's just associated with you forever.
Yeah.
What is it about the Question? You recently came back to him. You just concluded a miniseries.
Just concluded a 4-issue Black Label miniseries with Jeff Lemire and Bill Sienkiewicz on inks with Christopher Sotomayor on our color. That was a great experience. I loved working on the Question. This second time around, it was tough though. It was 200 pages of revisiting an old friend, but it was tough because I hadn't drawn him in years and years. So I was like, oh my God, I thought I knew how to draw this guy, but I kind of forgot. But when I got the Question assignment, Danny O'Neill was the writer, and it was a pivotal moment in my career. It was definitely a big opportunity for me at that time. And I think I did a lot of my artistic growth drawing that book, where I went from point A to point B to point C artistically. In my terms of understanding what made comics, there's a lot. So to be able to revisit it and bring all that knowledge to it 30 years later was big for me. I hope people dug it because it was a lot of fun to do.
When
And
you were,
any chance to work with Bill Sienkiewicz and
yeah.
Jeff Lemire was great. So
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what is it like being inked by Bill Sienkiewicz?
intimidating. And I say this to people because people talk about what a great team we are, and I think we're a very good comic team. One of those Kirby Sinnott kind of, comic teams. That's Bill Cowan and Sienkiewicz were one of those teams. But what I tell people is that it's terrifying all the time, and I liken it to Keith Richards and Mick Jagger talking about writing a song for the Rolling Stones, because there's other members of the Rolling Stones. It's not just them. So they said that they would write a song and then they have to present it to the band. Like, this is the new song we wrote. And they're waiting for the rest of the band to just start laughing at them. Like, we ain't playing this shit. Totally serious. So I'm like that. I'm like, I draw stuff with Bill for Bill and I'm penciling it. And I'm thinking, I can't send something half-assed into Bill. He's just going to laugh and go, yeah, I know he don't expect me to ink this. Oh my God. So I'm very, I'm very mindful of what I do because I want it to be good for perhaps one of the best artists who's ever worked in comics. That's my partner on this. And like, it better be good to start out with. Don't make him have to like make it good. That would be bad. So it's great, but it can be nerve-wracking.
I was gonna say, like, I expected one of two answers. The one you just gave, or it's okay, he'll draw over it.
Yeah, I draw over it anyway. No, I try to give him the best I can give him, which is why the partnership has lasted so long, I think.
Mm-hmm. And when you started on the question in the 80s and you found out you were going to work with Denny O'Neil, how'd that feel?
Well, you must have read some of the interviews. It was intimidating because Denny was my editor on Power Man and Iron Fist, my first book. And I never did anything right for Denny. The year and a half I did that book, I was late. My storytelling was bad. I was late again. My storytelling was worse. Why were they even dealing with this young black kid over at Marvel anyway? Oh my God, I think I drove Denny just crazy. He was very patient with me and just trying to teach me how to be a professional artist. So then, 3 years later, I've done other stuff. I've gone on. I'm Dennis Cowan now. I'm doing all this stuff. They asked me to do the question. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll do the question. Who's the writer? Dick Giordano walked me into the dude's office, opened the door, and said, there's your writer. It's Denny O'Neil. I thought I was going to die because I'm thinking, I got away from this dude. And now I'm back with him. And not only that, he's the writer on the book I'm doing. So it was 3 more years of like pretty much the same thing. I can't say it was like, oh man, we just got along great. No, it was tough. It was a different kind of book done in a different kind of way. Danny had very specific ideas, and I was trying my best to execute whatever he had and bring whatever I could to it. But it was a trial by fire for 3 years. It really was. It was great. In retrospect, it was perfect for me. But at the time, it was just like, oh my God, when is this going to end? When am I going to start Dr. Zero or whatever I can try next, because this is torture.
So it wasn't even a case of, oh my God, I'm working with a guy who helped revitalize Batman, or...
Oh, it was always that in a way. I mean, it was always that. But you have to realize at that point that I did The Question in the 80s, I'd already been in comics almost 10 years. I started when I was 14. So
with Rich Buckler.
Yes. So I'd already done it for a while. I wasn't jaded or cynical, but I really did know these guys. I knew Danny. I'd seen it part of my daily life since as a teenager. I would see them every day. So I didn't have that awe factor. I did have the legendary, these are my bosses factor. But it wasn't like I was trembling because it was Danny O'Neil or anything like that.
I feel
I was used to him as an editor putting his foot up my ass. So
I feel like that's something I forgot to consider, actually, is the fact that back then it was more common to see each other in the collaborative process.
Right. Yeah. Saw him every day. I mean, when I was 14, I worked for Rich Buckler. And then when I was like 15 or 16, I became an intern at Continuity for
Mhm.
Neil Adams. So I knew Rich Buckler. I knew Neil Adams. And through Neil and Rich, I met everyone in the industry. Greg Morrow, Wally Wood. Um, um, everyone came by. Everyone came through Neil's studio. So I literally met everyone and would go out hanging out with them and drinking with them and eating lunch with them and everything. It's part of my life. I really lived the dream as a kid. I was really amongst all the people that I grew up reading about, just trying to get into comics. And why they let me hang out and do all this stuff, I have no idea. But I really did. You
That's
know,
awesome.
it was my everyday life
That's
when you could
awesome.
actually see people. And if it wasn't in continuity, I was up at DC Comics. So then, I'm looking at Garcia-Lopez, who used to draw in the office every day. I'm looking at Ross Andrew, who used to draw in the other office almost every day. When he was doing, I think he was doing Superman. I don't know what he was doing, but he used to draw all his pages backwards on a piece of on a piece of layup on. He would draw the panels backwards, flip it over. That way he knew it was right, and then trace it off. I saw him do this, and I thought, I will never approach this level of layout genius in my life. Like I saw a lot of stuff, a lot of people. So again, I was very fortunate. Probably last generation to grow up like that.
That blows my mind, because when I think of Ross Andrew, I think of really detailed backgrounds and 3-point
Genius.
perspectives.
Yeah, genius.
And to,
Nicest guy in the whole world.
and to think
Genius.
that he did that backwards is
Yeah, he did. He did. He did it backwards.
that's okay.
And then we'll flip it over and do it right. That way he knew it would work. So now to this day, I'll do a drawing. And the easiest thing to do a face, do a body or whatever. Get a light box, flip it over, and then look at it through the light box. So you can see how off center and off kilter your drawing really is. So I was thinking about Ross Andrew and, fix it, make it right. So, yes,
I love those kinds of stories.
total truth.
And if you were to compare that experience from working on the question 30 years ago to working on the question now with a writer like Jeff Lemire, who probably grew up reading you,
He did, which was weird.
how that feel like in comparison?
Jeff is a very talented, great writer. So that was seamless. I mean, he's also an artist. So he's not writing stuff that he can't draw or that one can't draw. There's a lot of writers who do that. He never wrote any impossible scenes. He'd write scenes with thousands of people, but they always had a purpose and you could always figure out what to do. Jeff's an amazing writer. Amazing. I can't wait to do something else with him because he's really incredible. It was great. It was great coming back to that character and doing it again. Jeff is not Denny, but Jeff definitely channeled a lot of what Denny did into the work we did. It was a proper homage, and yet also a step beyond. And I was fortunate to work on both things, right, with Denny and Jeff. So
That's great.
yeah.
I have one last question, which is, can you tell us what the deal was with Nightcat?
That is that is a deep cut question of all deep cut questions. What the hell? Okay, I can tell you what the deal was with Nightcat. I probably have
this question has been bugging me for years.
that's incredible. I probably haven't really looked at that book since I did it, to tell you the truth. I know I did the whole comic book, but I could not tell you one panel in it. I could not tell you. I think I remember doing the splash, and I remember. Here's what happened. I'm up at Marvel. I think I was doing Deathlock at the time, or maybe I just finished the miniseries and had not started the regular series yet. Bob Budiansky was my editor on that, and I think he approached me we're doing this thing called Nightcat. And Nightcat started, it was a vanity project with Stan Lee and Sam Lefrak. Sam Lefrak was a real estate developer. I don't know if he's still alive, a real estate mogul from Manhattan. He had developments in Queens, and I guess he had them in Brooklyn, whatever, but I know he had in Queens. The one he had in Queens was called Lefrak City. I used to live in it. And basically, it's just low, middle income apartment complexes. He charged people rent. He became a very rich man doing that. But he also had a girlfriend. And his girlfriend was a singer. And the singer, I forget her name, was this little chick. He said, hey, I know the guy at Marvel Comics. Let's promote your career. We'll make a comic book promoting your career as Nightcat. So I guess she was down with that. And he knew Stan Lee. So Rich Sam called Stan Lee. Stan said, sure, we could do it. I think this is how it happened. And then they found me to draw it. So I ended up just taking the work on, like, I like money. That's okay. I'll draw Nightcat. But that's when I collaborated with Stan. Mm-hmm. So I remember having conversations with Stan on the phone. And really, he really did talk like that true believer kind of Stan that you see. He really did speak like that. Well, Danny, let me tell you how it's going to be. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I'm like, I'm talking to Stan Lee, and he sounds like Stan Lee. I'm tripping. And that's how we did it. He told me the plot over the phone, and then he sent me the plot, and I did it from the plot. Just broke it down, the script, and did it. I remember it was really late because everything was always late. So I did it, and I don't know who inked it. I don't remember who inked it. I know Jim Lee did a black and white cover to it, and Joe Jusko, I think, painted the cover over Jim Lee's thing. It was like this whole thing. I was like, and then we never heard from her again, which is probably good. My comic probably did not help her career whatsoever. So
I know.
She probably would have had better success without me doing that book.
I don't know.
Yeah, right. I never heard any of her music or anything.
I feel like talent rises. If she was really good, it wouldn't have mattered.
Yes.
The inker was Jimmy Palmiotti.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking when I was like, I think Jimmy inked that. So it's like, oh my God.
Yeah. It's an interesting story. So, Mr. Dennis Cowan, in this day and age of, I mean, you see Black characters like Miles Morales and all the stuff that's being done over at Black Mass, like Black, sure. And it feels really, really good that Milestone is back.
Thank you so much.
Part of that. So thank you. Congratulations for getting it back and for launching everything. I'm looking forward to everything, and thank you for doing the show. Is there anything else you want to plug?
No, man. That's it. It was a pleasure talking to you, and to all the fans. Thank you very much, and to you especially. Great questions. See, we answered. We got through all of it, right? We did okay today. So, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right, man.